So, first question is just introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about how you got involved with Humanist Minnesota.
My name's Paul Rupp. I'm the president of HumanistSMN. I originally was just looking for community and people to connect with, and I went to an event. It was Brad Onishi speaking on Christian nationalism back in. He was way ahead of the curve back in 2023, and met some of the people who were on the board, and ended up getting wrangled in by that group, and sort of have found myself falling forward into this position, I guess. We are between, anywhere between 450 and 500. It kind of ebbs and flows, but somewhere in that range. I would say probably back around 2022, 2023, we had sort of a big boom around when I joined. There was quite a few people joining, and since then, I mean, there's still a steady. Most months we have more people joining. The group had put up a billboard in the Twin Cities that just said "Good without a God." And I think that resonated with a lot of people here in the Twin Cities. We got some local attention from that, from the Star Tribune, as well as some national attention. I heard about it just in the wild through some podcast hosts, and so I think that's a big reason about it, or big reason why it occurred was we just kind of got some of that recognition, and again, I think that message just resonated with a lot of people. I think during that time, we were just kind of coming out of the COVID era, and people were, or I should say, at least the part of COVID where people weren't out and about as much. And I think coming out of that, people were just really desperately looking for other people to be in community with. I think people had spent years kind of doing some of the background work about thinking about what they believed, why they believed it, those types of things. And coming out of that, it can be challenging to find a group of people who have similar values to you, so that you can start getting back and out socializing.
So, one of the things I'm looking for when I'm picking chapters to interview for this series is just kind of the focus on action, any sort of action, but especially like community service and political involvement. And you guys, of course, do an incredible job of that. I spoke to Christine about that. If you could just tell me a little bit about that focus on action, how did it come about, and do you think it kind of has value for the people in this community?
I think that one of the biggest reasons why it came about, and you'll find this sort of across different programming and things, I think that most of the smaller chapters are doing, is a lot of it relates to, do you have people who are interested in doing it? And honestly, do you have people who are also kind of good at doing it? We have some people that are more visible, like Christine that you mentioned, who's just a really good people person and connecting with people. We have some behind the scenes people who prefer not to be named. That's just not their thing, but are really, really good at either. There's sort of two parts of it. There is sort of the volunteerism side of things and activating our community when there's things going on, especially here in Minnesota. There was a lot of activating over the last month and a half, 2 months. And so there's that part of it that's a little bit more reactive, and that is maybe at times like a little bit more or less politically involved, that kind of side of things, advocating for certain things that we care about as humanists. So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is doing the volunteer pieces, getting out and making our communities a better place, whether that's through, packing food for folks, making sure that people have clothes, providing bikes for children, and a lot of those, again, like, it's things that we have members that are passionate about those things, who care about or have maybe had food scarcity for themselves in the past, and they can relate to that, or just have connections to these groups prior. And I think that that's a lot of the reason why we end up doing those things, is because we just have people who understand that at a personal level. And also, it's just something that interests them. And that's, when you're like us and you're all volunteer, a lot of times it takes people who are just really passionate about something.
So, any updates from the past few weeks or months or whenever we last talked? Like, what have you guys been up to? Any cool events?
For posterity's sake of what's happened, Renee Nicole Good had just died. And this was before Alex Preddy was killed. So we were sort of meeting in this time where we already knew things were bad in the state of Minnesota. And I think people were already reeling from that a little bit. And we were still, in some ways, trying to figure out what we were going to do, where we could get involved. And then that next week, Alex Preddy was killed. And myself and some of our other members really felt like there was a number of things that we needed to do. And, one of those things was just providing space for people who maybe felt like they weren't connected to community, maybe felt like they didn't have place or people to talk to. So we had an event just for people to come and talk about what they were feeling in that moment, let off some steam a little bit and talk to people who had similar values to themselves. In those sessions, we talked with people who did have some fear around what was going on, and they had personal connections to it. We talked to people who just were literally asking for other people. They wanted to connect with other people and they just didn't have that anymore. And so that was an event that I think was really meaningful. And then one of the other people that was there facilitating me scheduled another follow-up session after that of saying, okay, so we've talked about how we're feeling about this. How can you actually go and get involved now? How can you go and do some of the mutual aid things that you've been hearing about in the state of Minnesota? How can you get out and start supporting your community? Because that was what we heard a lot of, was people were not only feeling pain that maybe they couldn't or they didn't have people to just talk to about what's been going on, but I think a lot of people were saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know I don't know where to start. It seems like everything's so dire, but I don't know where to go start. And so one of our members, Audrey, just took that on as okay, here's some of the things that you can do to get involved in our state. I think there was maybe a week in between those events. Yeah, so we did one, and Audrey had felt really strongly about doing this other one already, so they kind of just went hand in hand a little bit.
Next question was, how is your organization meeting the moment? But I feel like you just spoke to that perfectly well. So I don't know, anything else you want to kind of say on that front?
The people of Minnesota have this very activating nature where we feel like we see an injustice in the world, we see something going on, and we tend to not just sit around and let the thing happen. We tend to be a very compassionate community. That's certainly not ubiquitously true, but it is a big thing in the state of Minnesota, this sort of networking and supporting our communities. And I think people expect that when they join our group. I don't think people would be, I think if people joined and saw us as, we sit in stuffy rooms and navel gaze, I don't think people would stay very long. It's one of the biggest reasons, why we do it. Number one is we have, like I said before, we have people that are interested in doing it. But also, if we're supporting the state of Minnesota, the people that join us just expect it. We spend some time in community, but then we go and do something actually, because just sitting around doing nothing just doesn't feel good to us. But I'll also say, some of the things that we've been doing in the meantime too is connecting more with some of these and expanding some of our involvement in a group like the food group here in Minnesota, who's doing a lot of the mutual aid things. When you hear about food being brought to people who are afraid to leave their homes, some of these groups are the ones doing that. A lot of these connections go back years. We've been working with a lot of these groups that are supporting mutual aid. It's just something I think you'll find is that a lot of humanists are already connected to some of these groups that are doing really important things. Because again, it's just groups of people who want to make their community a better place. And when that is your main goal, is to make people's lives better, when you see people's lives getting meaningfully worse in a very short period of time, you just don't sit around and wait very long to do something about it. So a lot of these groups we've already been connected with for years, and we had those relationships built up to an extent. And when this started happening, some of these groups reached out and said, hey, we could actually use some more people. Can you send more people? And we've done that. The best thing that you can do right now is to meet your neighbor, is to talk to the groups that are already doing a lot of the critical work, get connected with them today. That's one of the biggest things I would say to any humanist group in any of the states is get connected to those groups today. Whether that's, you go there once a month, you send some money, whatever it is. I think getting connected to those groups today is better than getting connected to those groups tomorrow.
how do you envision the future for your chapter, and what resources or what's it going to take to get there?
When I joined the board, I think 2 years ago now, we were just kind of coming out of this really rapid growth phase, and one of the things our vice president at the time said was, I think we're really going into the, okay, we've grown a lot. We don't necessarily need to continue thinking about growth. What we need to think about is sustainability. And when you're, again, I keep saying an all volunteer organization because that's what we are. You really have to decide where your resources are going to go. And a lot of our resources had gone into, okay, let's grow, let's connect with people. And I think that's good. I'm not saying we don't want new members. We do want that. But what we really want is we have all of these members, right? These members have joined, these members pay dues, these members are looking for us to deliver something to them. That's why they joined. That's why they continue to support us. And some of the things that we're doing right now is saying like, okay, what types of programming can we do? Can we do better programming? Can we do bigger programming? Can we do smaller programming but more frequently? What things can we do? And I think that's something that our group has done really well, is said like, let's be really nimble, let's try new things, whether that's, a big forum for National Religious Freedom Day, or a very small event, or I shouldn't say a very small event, but a smaller event like a board game night where we're just hanging out and playing board games. Like that, sort of that range of things, or all of the volunteering and things like that we've talked about. And all of that takes somebody who cares and is interested in doing those things. Right now, it really feels like we have one person doing 8 things. We have some of these really, really active volunteers doing a ton of stuff. Many of them retired, many of them saying, I wish I was retired and not working this full-time job. So they're saying like, hey, I want to scale back a little bit. I maybe don't want to do 8 things, but I'll still do 5. But that means that, there's certain things that we need people to pick up. And so what we're really trying to do is find those members who are within our organization or haven't joined us yet, who are interested in doing things that really can bring a significant amount of fulfillment or meaning, or drive your purpose towards getting involved in doing the things that kind of bring that good feeling of building community, of being engaged in community. So we're really doing that of how do we build a more sustainable organization where we're doing things and not burning out our most active volunteers. And the way to do that isn't to have one person doing 8 things, it's to have 8 people doing 8 things. And it's really challenging too, because like when you have new people, it's like, hey, person who's been doing this forever, how do you do this, right? And then they're like, well, I'm still doing it then, right? But it's like, those are the things that you have to do if you want to have, sometimes just letting the new person do it and either breaking it, which can be good, because sometimes breaking it, you end up with a new thing that's actually better. Or, sometimes too, if I'm doing something, I'm going to approach it different than some of our retired folks are going to do it. And it might be more targeted towards somebody who's my age. But, that's part of what we're looking for too, is finding people who are around, millennial age. I mean, obviously if we can get Gen Z, I mean, like all of these different ages of people we're trying to attract. So some of it is a very beneficial thing for us to do. I think one of the things that people really want desperately right now is a place that they can go where they find meaning, where they find purpose, where they don't necessarily have to buy into some really big belief structures, into a specific central dogma, but they want a group of people who they really feel like they can connect with just as people. And I think one of the best ways for us to do that is by building compassionate communities that are curious. Like, I think those 2 things in combination really create a place where people can go, where they feel safe, where they feel like they can meet other people who are like them. For me, one of the biggest things that I felt as I joined this organization was seeing people that are, my parents or my grandparents' age, who have these really progressive beliefs that are much closer to my own, and seeing adults who have similar beliefs to me was like such a game changer in my mind, because I was like, oh, there are people out there from these other generations that care about the same things that I do, that already have done a lot of the things that were there when we started when we started pushing towards a lot of the values that we care about, they were there. They were the ones that were pushing it, and meeting those people and being around them and hearing them, maybe use a little bit different language for how I would say something, but being able to learn from them has been really critical as well. So I think even though we maybe want to get younger, I think creating spaces where we can connect with and do intergenerational work, I think it's just so valuable to younger folks to be able to connect with the older generations too.